Welcome back to the channel. Thank y'all for hanging with me on this Wednesday. So I just got done with the tournament on Gunnersville, and I want to kind of break down what I was doing because this is really a technique that I've worked pretty hard at for about the last 10 years, and it is something that is fairly specific. I don't think a lot of guys do it, and it is not just a grass technique or a post-spawn technique, but this is something you can run all through the summer, into the fall, and on lakes where you may have bushes and could flood. The water could come up. Those deeper trees, especially in the post spawn when the bass want to get deep, but with the rising water, they're going to still stay in the cover. This is a great technique. So I'm going to give you my line, basically my rod, reel, the whole setup, and what I look for, because you're going to have fry garters that are going to bite the jig. You're going to have those brim bed bass that are hanging around that'll also get on this technique, and a jig is really good always on a full moon. It's really good when you want to give the bass one big meal, something that they're looking for before they head out. And you're also going to have those bigger fish, those females that are done spawning, getting out to the offshore structure. So where those contour lines are really close together, that vertical structure rather, is what I'm looking for. And this week on Gunnersville, we had some windy little creek channels that had some coontail that was topped out. But again, if you don't have grass in your lake, this could have been cypress trees, this could be laydown trees, this could be whatever is in the water, whatever kind of wood or cover you have, docks, this 1 ounce jig is going to work in those situations as well. So I'm going to go into that, and I'm going to talk about a few other things that I think are also important, because this is a hero or zero technique. And I don't necessarily know why some days they get on it so good, and then some days it's just not, you can't get a bite doing it. That's kind of how my tournament went. I did catch some on it and dialed myself in, but we'll start with the bait. I like to flip a couple different style jigs. This is a Hack Attack 1 ounce heavy cover flipping jig, whatever he calls it, but it has a really strong hook. So if you have a really stiff rod, this will work with this hook. But if you do not, there are some other options. I also flip a Bose jig, and it has more of a normal style hook on it. You can see the head design on both of these. They're fairly similar. It's going to be a vertical line tie always when I'm flipping this heavier jig, because I feel like that vertical line tie is going to make the jig fall the most natural. I think a horizontal line tie is great when you're fishing it on the bottom, but for this technique, most of the fish are going to get it on the fall because they're suspended in the cover. So what typically happens is by the time you pick up on your jig, they're already swimming with it. You can feel that fish on there, but as you see, both of these are a Rage Menace trailer. I just like the way that falls. If you want to really slow your jig down, you can go up to something with a little bit more appendage like a Rage Craw, but that's basically it. It's a lot of patience, a lot of confidence, and you're going to be flipping that jig around vertical structure. So yes, there may be trees, yes, there may be grass, but the key to this whole technique is finding where your boat is sitting out in like 10 feet or deeper, and you're flipping into 5 feet less than where your boat is at. So a lot of times I'll be flipping into like 6 feet and the boat will be sitting out in 12 feet, but they're right on that edge. So again, this doesn't have to be a coontail or a hydrilla or an eelgrass thing. This could be trees on channel swing banks or something like that. You need the contour change. Bass love to get on vertical structure in the post spawn. So now the rod for me, this is going to be a rod with a really fast tip. So what you'll find, rods that have more of a moderate bend are going to be, if you have an extra heavy moderate bending rod compared to an extra heavy rod with a lot of tip, like this extra fast tip, this is a much more limber rod. So with more tip, you got to think more limber. Less tip, less limber. So what I mean by that is this is a really heavy, extra heavy power rod, but since there is so much softness out here in the tip of the rod, when you set the hook, all this is bending before we get to the really stiff part of the rod. So fairly limber out here, then we get really stiff. if you look at just a rod that doesn't have a whole lot of tip, where the rod first starts bending, that whole thing is stiff. So if you've ever broken a rod and you just take the tip off and put it on the, the part that's not broken, you're going to realize how much stiffer that makes that rod. So this is an extra fast tip. I really like that when I'm pitching that jig around, and then I'm not letting the fish know that I'm there. I know they're there before they know I'm there. I think that's very important because they will drop that jig. All right. That's the rod. 50-pound braid. Very important with this technique. 65 is going to be too heavy. The jig's not going to fall correctly, especially on days where you have a little bit of wind. That's going to pull that jig and just kind of hover it there. It's not going to go to the bottom. You really want that thing to shoot past the fish's face. This is not a natural looking bait, so you don't want them to get the best look at it. You want it darting by them. It's a reaction bite. 50-pound braid is crucial, and typically you have, 7 or 8, 10, 12 feet of line out before you set the hook. So it's not like you're short lining them in 2 feet of water. They're typically out a little bit deeper. You're not going to break 50 pounds. So 50-pound suffix 832 for me on this. If you go up to 65, you are going to really struggle with this technique. All right. Now, jig fishing, I talk a lot about it. It is crucial anytime you are jig fishing to have a strong secondary pattern, because the jig fishing technique can go away at any time. So, unlike finesse fishing, where it's all about throwing your finesse baits where big fish live, a jig is the exact opposite. You can throw a jig where all fish live, and you're still going to catch the bigger fish. So the reason I always talk about you need to go take finesse baits and throw them in places where only the big ones live is because if you throw them in places where all fish live, you're just going to catch little fish. It'll never get by the little ones to where you can catch big ones. The opposite of that is true with a jig. You can take this and throw it where all fish live, and you will still catch big ones. So for that reason, on the days where the big ones aren't biting, they're temperamental, the conditions are messed up, whatever it is, a full moon, a shad spawn, they just haven't got to where you're at yet, this technique goes away quite often. So I'm not saying that you can't go back the next day and crush them, but you're not guaranteed to always go out and catch them, no matter how strong your practice is, how confident you are. So for that reason, you better have another technique going. And that's why I'm always looking for something that's similar, but not the same thing. So I had another, I don't know how this can get so messed up. All right. So I also found some fish punching shallow grass. So I'm still with the vertical structure presentation. These fish were right on the edge of the main river channel in matted vegetation. They're kind of like a little eddy pocket out of the way of the current. They're up on a bar, and there were some mats on there. So I was flipping this 1.5 ounce weight, 65-pound braid on this, because I'm only pitching this into like 3 feet of water. But 65-pound braid is very crucial. I like an extra heavy cover flipping hook. This is a 3/0. I think that 3/0 for me, the way I set the hook, really gets them. 1.5 ounce weight, and that is a Gambler Stinger. That color is Killer G. It is very similar to like a Bama bug. It's got a lot of June bug in it. It's kind of like a June bug green pumpkin swirl with more green pumpkin in it. And I snell that 3/0 extra heavy cover flipping hook made by Gamakatsu. Not just heavy cover flipping hook, extra heavy cover flipping hook. I don't know, I can't say that, but extra heavy cover, and I have that snelled on there. Okay, so I talked about the extra fast tip when I'm fishing the jig. There's no doubt when you pitch into one of these mats that there is a fish on there. With the jig, I'm flipping it around that sparse grass, so a lot of times you'll pick up and you kind of feel the grass, and then you can kind of feel the fish kind of streaking away with it. This, it's a clean break through there. You feel fish or you feel nothing, and it's very distinct. So 65-pound braid, because it's in shallow water. And then I don't use any tip. So whenever I'm punching, the way I have this set up with the snelled 3/0 hook, I feel the weight of the fish, and then I just kind of give it the pull. And I don't want any tip. So all of my punch-in sticks, they're very, very moderate. There's very little tip on there. I have no problem putting that weight where I want it, but stiffer rod. It's basically the same rod blank. I just have taken off a couple inches of the tip, which has made it a much stiffer rod. So punching, I want that stiffer rod. I'm also pulling them out of heavy cover. This situation, it was gator vine and lily pads mixed together. I had a couple different setups. That was 1.5 ounces because we had a lot of wind and sun. In practice, I was flipping with 1 ounce because there was no wind, but it was cloudy, so I had this black with blue tip. If you like to fish river systems, you know how powerful that black with that blue tip is. In the cloudy conditions, this was getting bit a lot compared to what anything else I've tried. And then when it got sunny, I guess there was a little bit of light penetration through those mats because it was gator vine. They really got on that green pumpkin June bug swirl. But that was what I caught all my fish on in this tournament. The jig bite really, really tapered off. I only had a few bites on it in the tournament. But I really feel like I could have went back there the next day and crushed them on that jig. So, excuse me. But that is a 1-2 punch in the post spawn. Fry garters, those big females that are getting out to the offshore structure. This is going to work on defined creek channels, basically the main river channel. If you have some cover that is touching, you want to look for that vertical structure. Find whatever covers on there. It could be grass, could be wood, but try that. That is going to catch you big ones, and a lot of days it'll catch you good numbers as well. So good luck to you, and I'll see you on the water.